Stay quiet. I'll keep you hidden in my room, the little girl whispered to the fleeing Korean Mafia boss. The man who kicked in the basement door didn't look like someone who ever ran from anything. His suit was custom. His watch still glittered under the flickering hallway light, and yet blood kept pouring through his fingers like it had a mind of its own. He staggered into the cramped apartment beneath a loud Koreatown club, breathing like his lungs were full of broken glass, already searching the shadows for the betrayal that finally caught him. Then a small voice stopped him. Not with fear, not with a scream, with a command. A girl, maybe 6, stood in the doorway of her tiny bedroom, barefoot on cold linoleum, her pajamas too thin for the draft sneaking under the door. Her eyes flicked past him toward the stairwell, listening, calculating, like she'd been forced to learn the sound of danger a long time ago. She raised one finger to her lips, stepped closer, and grabbed his wrist as if she'd done it before. Quiet, she breathed. In my room. Now. Before he could decide if she was bait or miracle, the elevator at the end of the corridor chimed. Once, soft and polite like the building itself was pretending nothing bad ever happened here. A man's voice drifted closer, low and impatient. Another answered into a radio. And the Korean Mafia boss, who'd spent his whole life making other people disappear, felt something he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't in control anymore. And the only person standing between him and the men coming to finish the job was a little girl who didn't even flinch at the blood. The man stared at her like she had spoken a language no one else in the city remembered. Down the hallway, the voices shifted closer. Men's voices, measured and confident, coming in the slow, organized rhythm of a search. The boss turned his head slightly, tracking it all, jaw tightening like he was holding back a growl. The little girl didn't move out of the way. She moved closer. She grabbed his wrist again. Small hand, strong grip, and tugged like she'd decided his weight was her problem now. This way, she breathed. He should have shaken her off. He should have pushed past her, found a better hiding place, taken control the way men like him always did. Instead, he let her pull him. He followed her into the small room. The walls were covered in taped-up school papers and stickers. A plastic globe sat on a shelf like the room wanted to pretend the world was safe and round and predictable. On the floor was a half-finished tower of wooden blocks, frozen mid-collapse. The girl pointed to the closet. He shook his head once, too fast, too loud in the silence. She snapped her gaze up at him like a grown-up would, like he was the one being difficult, not the bleeding man in a suit, but the one failing to understand the rules. She opened the closet door, shoved aside a hanging row of jackets, and pointed again. His breath hitched. He took one step inside, then another, hunched under the low shelf. The closet smelled like laundry detergent and crayons and that soft, dusty warmth closets always had. Like a place where the world hid things it didn't want to deal with. The girl eased the door almost shut, leaving a crack. Don't, she whispered. And when he shifted, she shook her head so hard her hair slapped her cheeks. No noise. If you make noise, they look. If they look, they see. If they see, they take. The footsteps outside stopped at the far end of the hallway. A voice, low and flat, said something in Korean. Another voice answered, closer. Then the footsteps started again, coming toward the door. Inside the closet, the boss slowly lowered his hand from his side and tested his balance. His other hand slid toward his waistband out of habit, then froze when he realized there was nothing there. No weapon, no insurance. He must have lost it in the stairwell. For the first time all night, he looked trapped. The little girl crouched by the closet, eyes locked on the door, breathing slow like she was practicing. The doorknob rattled once. She didn't flinch. A fist hit the door. Not a polite knock. A demand. The little girl leaned close to the closet crack and whispered, "Do not talk," not even breathing loud. Then she stood, padded across the living room, and climbed onto a chair like she'd done it 1,000 times. She reached up and turned the deadbolt, but she didn't open the door all the way, only enough to show a sliver of her face. "Yeah?" she called, letting her voice go high and sleepy on purpose. A man's silhouette filled the hallway gap. The angle caught the shine of a chain at his neck and the hard edge of something clipped under his jacket. His eyes scanned past her like she was furniture. "We're looking for someone," he said, in English without warmth. "He came in here." The little girl yawned, too dramatic, too perfect. "No," she said, like it was ridiculous he'd even asked. The man pressed his hand against the door, trying to push it wider. The chain held. He leaned down so his face was closer to hers. "Where's your mom?" The girl lifted her chin. "At work." The man's gaze slid over her shoulder again, hunting for movement. "Anybody else inside?" The girl's eyes flicked down the hallway behind him. Just a quick glance, like she was checking if his friends were watching. Then she looked back at him, and she smiled. Not sweet, not friendly, the kind of smile kids use when they're about to lie and they're proud of how good they are at it. "You can't come in," she said. "Our building manager put a notice. There's bedbugs." The man blinked. The little girl nodded like this was tragic news. "If you come inside, they'll jump on you. My teacher said they get in your clothes and you take them home and they bite your neck. Like a vampire." For a moment the man just stared at her. Then his face tightened in disgust. He pulled his hand off the door like it burned. He muttered something under his breath. Half curse, half complaint. The little girl added, "My mom said if strangers come in, she'll call the police because the bugs are expensive." The man's eyes narrowed like he was deciding whether to risk it anyway. From down the hallway, another voice called, impatient, "Move." The man hesitated, then leaned in close one last time. "If you're lying," he said softly, "you'll regret it." The girl's face went blank. "I don't know you," she said, flat as a wall. "Go away." The man stared at her for another beat, then backed off, turning like he couldn't stand being in a building like this one any longer. His footsteps moved away, faster now, and the hallway noise gradually dissolved into the hum of the elevator and the distant traffic. The little girl shut the door, slid the bolt, and stood there without moving for several seconds. Only then did she exhale. She walked back to her room, opened the closet, and looked up at the man inside like she just checked him in at a doctor's office. "You can come out," she whispered, "but you have to still be quiet." He stepped out slowly, shoulders tight, and when his feet hit the carpet he swayed. His face had gone pale, sweat collecting near his hairline. His eyes, dark and used to intimidating rooms full of adults, stayed on her like she was the only thing making sense. "What's your name?" he rasped. The girl blinked like she hadn't expected questions. "Maya." He nodded once like he was filing it away. "Maya," he repeated, and the way he said it sounded like a vow he didn't understand yet. He took one step toward the couch, then his knees buckled. He caught himself on the armrest, but the movement pulled at his wound and he hissed through his teeth. Maya rushed forward, braced her shoulder under his arm, and tried to hold him up the way a kid tries to hold up a falling bookshelf. Pure determination, no math. "You're too heavy," she whispered angrily, like it was his fault. He almost laughed, came out as a broken breath. The room felt too still, like the building itself was listening. Maya guided him toward the narrow couch anyway. The couch was covered in a blanket printed with cartoon planets. He collapsed onto it and stared at the ceiling like he expected it to collapse too. Maya didn't panic. She grabbed a roll of paper towels from the kitchen, climbed onto the couch, and pressed it against his side with both hands like she was trying to plug a leak. "Don't die," she said, very practical. "My mom will get mad." His eyes slid toward her. "Your mom," he whispered. "When does she come back?" Maya shrugged. "Late." His jaw flexed. He wasn't safe. He knew it. Whoever was hunting him wouldn't stop because a little girl said the word, bedbugs. Men like that didn't stop. They circled. They waited. They came back meaner. And he was bleeding in a stranger's apartment with no weapon, no team, no plan. Maya stared at him for a long second, then leaned closer like she was sharing a secret with a friend. "If you talk loud," she said, "the walls will tell." He swallowed, and his eyes hardened because she was right. In buildings like this, walls were thin and neighbors were bored and everyone was hungry for someone else's trouble. Outside, a car door slammed. Then another. The sound was muffled through the window, but the rhythm of it felt organized. Maya's head tilted toward the window. "You hear that?" she whispered. He did, and he hated that she heard it too. A key scraped in the lock. Maya sprang off the couch like her body had been waiting for the sound. "She's back," Maya breathed. The man tried to sit up, panic flashing. He looked around like a cornered animal, eyes landing on the closet again. Maya grabbed his sleeve. "Shoo," she said, urgent. "My room." She didn't wait for him to agree. She half-dragged, half-guided him back, shoved the closet door open, and helped him inside again. This time she pulled a pile of winter coats in front of him to block the crack. Then she ran to the living room as the front door opened. A woman stepped inside, shoulders slumped from exhaustion. Her work shoes squeaked slightly on the floor. She wore scrubs under a thrift store jacket, hair tied back, face drawn tight like someone who had spent the whole night scrubbing other people's messes out of places that never thanked her for it. She froze the second she looked up. Not because she saw him, she didn't, because she felt the air. The apartment had that charged stillness that didn't belong to normal nights. Her eyes flicked to the couch, to the paper towels on the floor, to the faint smear near the edge of the rug. Then to her daughter standing too straight, hands tucked behind her back like she was hiding something. "Maya," the woman said quietly. "What happened?" Maya blinked fast. "Nothing." The woman's gaze hardened. "Why are you awake?" Maya shrugged too quickly. The woman moved past her, toward the couch, toward the rug, toward the smear. Then her eyes dropped to the floor again, and she saw the blood. Her breath caught like she'd been punched. "Maya," she whispered, voice suddenly sharp. "Where is he?" Maya's chin lifted, stubborn. "He's not he. He's hurt." The woman's eyes snapped to the bedroom door. Maya stepped in front of it like a tiny security guard. The woman reached for her phone with shaking fingers, then stopped, because in her mind, she could already see the next part. Police, questions, men coming back, her daughter crying, the building turning into a crime scene, and somewhere under all that, another vision. A reward poster she'd seen taped near the bus stop, a grainy photo of a man in a suit, a number with too many zeros to feel real. The woman swallowed hard. "Maya," she said, barely breathing. "Move." Maya didn't. "He didn't scare me," Maya whispered. "He listened." The woman stared at her daughter like she was looking at a stranger. Then, slowly, she walked to the bedroom door and pushed it open. The closet door was closed. The room was dim. Everything looked normal, until the coats shifted. A man's face appeared in the shadowed gap, pale and slick with sweat, eyes focused and dangerous even while wounded. For 1 second, the woman's body forgot how to move. She recognized him immediately. Everyone in Koreatown had heard the rumors, the whispers, the way people lowered their voices around certain names. Kang Jae-hyun. In the neighborhood, they called him the broker, the man who made problems disappear and debts become permanent. He looked smaller in real life than on the news, but there was something in his gaze that still felt like a locked door. The woman's hand tightened on her phone. He watched her watch him. Then he spoke, voice rough and low. "I won't hurt you," he said. "I need 10 minutes. The woman's laugh came out sharp and humorless. 10 minutes? She hissed. "You brought death to my door." Maya tugged her sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, pleading. "Please." The woman looked down at her daughter, at the way Maya was planted there, defending a stranger, at the way her small fingers trembled but didn't let go. The woman closed her eyes for a beat. Then she made a choice she didn't fully understand herself. She locked the door again. She slid the bolt. She turned the chain latch and checked it twice. And she didn't call anyone. If you're still with me right now, take 2 seconds and hit subscribe, because this story only gets tighter from here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. The woman, Hannah, Maya's mom, moved with the speed of a person who had survived too many close calls. She grabbed a dish towel, wet it, and knelt beside the couch without looking at him too closely, like she didn't want her fear to turn into curiosity. "Lift your shirt," she ordered. He hesitated. Hannah's eyes flashed. "You bleed on my daughter's blanket. I'm going to hate you forever. Now move." For a half second, something like surprise crossed his face, like he wasn't used to being spoken to that way. Then he complied, pulling the fabric up enough for her to see. The wound wasn't movie dramatic. It was worse in a real way, deep enough to be dangerous, messy enough to tell her it hadn't been cleaned, and close enough to places in the body you don't get to lose. Hannah sucked in a breath through her teeth. "You need a hospital," she whispered. He shook his head once. "No, you'll die." "I've been closer," he said. Hannah pressed the towel against it and started working like the many nights she'd cleaned blood off your floors had taught her what not to touch. Maya hovered beside them, eyes wide. "Can I help?" Maya whispered. Hannah didn't look up. "Go sit." Maya sat, but she didn't leave. She grabbed her school backpack, pulled out a small first aid kit with superhero bandages, and set it on the coffee table like a peace offering. Hannah almost cried right there. Not from fear, but from the sheer normal sweetness of her daughter trying to solve horror with stickers. Outside, engines idled along the curb. More than one. Hannah could hear it through the window. The low purr of cars that didn't belong to people who worked normal jobs. She lowered her voice. "Who's looking for you?" He didn't answer immediately, like he was choosing how much truth to spill into a room this small. "My own people," he said finally. "And men who used to be my people." Hannah's hands stilled. "So you did something." His eyes met hers. "I survived." Hannah swallowed anger, swallowed fear. "How long until they come back?" He glanced toward the ceiling, like he could see through it, like he could hear the city's mind turning. "Soon." Hannah's grip tightened. "Then you can't stay." Maya's head jerked up. "Yes, he can." Hannah's eyes flashed at her. "Maya." Maya pointed a small finger at the man. "He listened to me?" she repeated, stubborn like a nail. "Bad guys don't listen." The man looked away, jaw working like he didn't know what to do with that sentence. Hannah stood abruptly and went to the kitchen, pulling open drawers, searching. She found gauze, duct tape, a bottle of rubbing alcohol. Her supplies looked like a poor person's solution to a rich person's problem. She came back and crouched again. "If you stay here," she whispered, "you put my kid in danger." His gaze dropped to Maya. Something shifted in him, something tight and guarded. "I didn't choose this door," he said. "It was open." Hannah's lips pressed together. "My daughter opened it." Maya lifted her chin like she was proud. A sudden thump sounded in the hallway. Somebody slamming a door, somebody moving too fast, somebody talking too loud. Hannah flinched. Maya didn't. The man's eyes sharpened, listening. Then, faintly, a voice outside, "Check every floor." Hannah's blood ran cold. The man spoke without moving his lips much. "They're searching." Hannah looked around the apartment. One bedroom, one closet, one bathroom, one window with a fire escape that rattled when the wind hit it. No second exit. "We're trapped," she whispered. Maya slid off the couch and walked into her room. She came back holding something small in her palm. A paper crane. She must have folded it at school. It was wrinkled at the wings, but it was still beautiful in the way children's hands can make miracles out of cheap paper. Maya held it out to the man. "What is that?" Hannah whispered, confused. Maya looked up at her mother like it was obvious. "It's luck," she said. "You're supposed to keep it if you don't want something bad to happen." The man stared at the crane like it was a weapon he didn't recognize. Slowly, he reached out and took it. The paper looked ridiculous against his big hand, against his expensive watch, against the blood drying on his knuckles. He closed his fist carefully around it anyway, like he was afraid of crushing it. Footsteps approached in the hallway again. Closer now. Slower. Confident. A knock hit their door. Not the same man from earlier. This knock was steady. Professional. Hannah's eyes widened. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Maya moved first, small body calm, stepping toward the door like she owned it. Hannah grabbed her wrist. No, she breathed, panic rising. Maya, don't. Maya looked up at her mother with a quiet fury. If you open it, Maya whispered, they'll look inside. If I open it, they look at me. Hannah froze, because it was true. Men like that didn't look at women like her with respect. But they did look. And they definitely didn't look at children as threats. Maya peeled Hannah's fingers off her wrist and stepped to the door. She didn't undo the chain. She opened it just enough to show her face. A different man stood there, older, heavy-shouldered, with eyes that didn't blink much. He wore a plain jacket, but the way he stood told Hannah he wasn't plain at all. Two more men waited down the hallway like shadows. The older man smiled at Maya like it hurt him. Hi, he said softly. We're looking for a man who might have gotten into the building. Did you see anyone? Maya's eyes stayed wide and innocent. No, she said. The older man crouched a little, lowering himself to her level. Sometimes bad men run and hide, he said gently. If you tell me the truth, I can protect you and your mom. Maya tilted her head. My mom is in the shower. The man's gaze flicked over her shoulder, searching. Maya moved her body just slightly, blocking the line of sight with perfect instinct. And, Maya added, there's a skunk. The man paused. A skunk. Maya nodded seriously. In the bathroom. Came in the window. If you open the door more, it'll spray. My mom said skunk spray gets stuck in your hair for 100 years. One of the men down the hall snorted. The older man didn't laugh. He stared at Maya like he was weighing her. Skunk, huh, he murmured, not buying it, but not wanting to test it either. Hannah could hear her own heartbeat. The older man's eyes slid toward the floor, noticing the worn welcome mat, noticing the cheap shoes by the door, noticing how poor the place looked. His mouth tightened with disdain. He stood up, still staring at Maya. If you remember anything, he said, voice turning colder, tell your building manager. Understand? Maya nodded like she was obedient. The older man turned away, signaling the others. Their footsteps faded down the hallway. Maya shut the door and locked it again. Her hands trembled now that it was over. Hannah scooped her up and hugged her so tightly Maya squeaked. You can't do that, Hannah whispered fiercely into her hair. You can't. Maya whispered back, small but steady. I did. From the couch, the man watched them like he was watching a world he didn't know existed. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing shallow. When he opened them again, his gaze was different. Less predator, more awake. Hannah finished wrapping his wound with gauze and tape, her hands moving fast. What's your plan? She demanded, voice low. Because I don't have one. He swallowed, face tightening as pain rippled through him. They'll keep searching tonight. By morning, they'll lock down this block. Hannah's throat went dry. Then we leave. He shook his head slightly. You leave. Hannah stared at him. You brought them here. He didn't argue. The silence after that was thick. Maya climbed onto the couch and sat carefully near his feet like she was sitting beside a sick dog she'd decided to keep. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small keychain flashlight shaped like a star. She clicked it on and off once. Testing. What are you doing? Hannah whispered. Maya looked serious. If the lights go out, you can still see, she said and handed the flashlight to the man. He stared at it. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't powerful. It was a child's toy with a weak beam, but his fingers wrapped around it like it mattered. The hours crawled. Outside, engines came and went. Doors slammed. Voices rose, then fell. Once, someone shouted in Korean down the hall, angry and sharp. Another time, there was a pounding at a neighbor's door and muffled arguing. Hannah kept Maya close. She didn't turn on extra lights. She didn't play the TV. She packed a small bag without thinking, birth certificate, some cash, Maya's sweater, her inhaler, a granola bar. And all the while, the man on the couch sat still, listening, conserving energy like a machine running low on power. At some point near dawn, Maya fell asleep sitting up. Her head leaned against the man's leg like it was the most natural place in the world. Hannah saw it and felt something crack in her chest. She hated him for being here. She hated the people outside for hunting him like animals. But most of all, she hated the truth that her daughter, her cautious, quiet child, had chosen him as something to protect. Hannah stood in the kitchen, boiling water for instant oatmeal, hands shaking. There was only enough for one bowl. She poured it anyway and set it down in front of Maya when she woke. "I'm not hungry," Hannah lied. Maya frowned. "You always say that when you are." Hannah's mouth tightened. "Eat." From the couch, the man watched, his eyes lowered to Hannah's hands. Raw from work, nails short, skin rough. Then to the single bowl. His voice came out quietly. "You don't have much." Hannah didn't look at him. "Don't start feeling sorry for me. You don't get to buy your way into my life." He swallowed. "I can." Hannah finally turned, eyes blazing. "Try. I dare you." He held her gaze, and for the first time he didn't look like a king. He looked like a man whose money suddenly had no language. Maya chewed slowly, watching them both. Then she said to the man, "You're supposed to eat too." He almost smiled. "I'm okay." Maya pointed at his side. "No, you're leaking." Hannah pressed her lips together, fighting a laugh that didn't belong here. The man's eyes followed Maya as she stood and went to her desk. She pulled out a small notebook, tore a page, and began folding again. Careful creases, practiced hands. "What are you making now?" Hannah whispered, exhausted. Maya didn't look up. "More luck," she said. She folded until the paper became another crane, then another. One by one, she lined them along the windowsill like tiny guards facing the street. The man watched in silence. Then, unexpectedly, he spoke not to Hannah but to Maya. "Do you like airplanes?" he asked. Maya's head snapped up. "Like real ones?" He nodded. "My teacher says they're just math," Maya said. He huffed softly. "Your teacher is wrong." Hannah's eyes narrowed. "Don't fill her head with nonsense." He ignored her and kept speaking to Maya, voice low, like he was giving her something instead of taking. He told her about the first time he'd flown, the way the city looked from above, small, quiet, harmless. He described the ocean stretching out past the airport like a sheet of metal under the sun. Maya's eyes widened. "You saw the ocean from the sky?" He nodded. "And it looked like freedom." Hannah felt her stomach twist. It was a pretty line. Dangerous because it almost sounded honest. The day brightened. Not much, just gray light through dirty glass. Outside, the hunt tightened. Hannah peeked through the blinds and saw two black SUVs parked wrong. Half on red, half blocking a hydrant. Like rules didn't apply to whoever owned them. A man leaned against one, talking into a phone, scanning every person who walked past. Hannah's hands went cold. She turned back to the man. "They're still here." He pushed himself upright slowly, jaw clenched, sweat beading. "Then we move before they decide to start opening doors again." Hannah grabbed the duffel bag. "We're leaving now." He tried to stand, made it halfway, and his legs betrayed him. He caught himself on the wall, breath cutting short. Hannah stared at him, fury rising. "You can't even walk." He steadied himself. "I can." "You can't," she snapped. "And if you fall in the stairwell, they'll hear you from the street." Maya stepped between them, eyes darting. "Fire escape," she whispered. Hannah looked toward the window. The fire escape was narrow and rusted, with a drop that made her knees ache just thinking about it. The man followed her gaze. "It's possible," he said. Hannah shook her head hard. "Not with you like that." Maya tugged the man's sleeve. "You have to try," she whispered. Then she looked up at her mom. "If we stay, they come in." Hannah's throat tightened, because Maya was right again. The man breathed out slowly, and for a second his face went distant, like he was thinking in maps and contingencies, like this was a problem he could solve if he treated it like business. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black card holder. He opened it and slid out a thick card, embossed, no name, just a symbol. He held it out to Hannah. "Take this. Go to the Wilshire branch. Ask for Mr. Yoon. He'll give you cash and a car. He'll put you somewhere safe." Hannah stared at it like it was poison. "I'm not taking your money." "It's not charity," he said. It's repayment. For what? She snapped. His eyes flicked toward Maya. For not leaving me in the hallway. Hannah's jaw tightened. That was my daughter, not you. He nodded once, and it looked like the admission cost him. Then he extended the card holder again, more insistently. Hannah's hands clenched. She didn't take it. Maya looked at the card, then looked at the man. Then she said, very quietly, I don't want your card. Both adults froze. Maya's voice stayed calm. I want you to take us to the ocean. The real one. Not from the sky. Hannah's breath caught. The man stared at Maya like she had just rewritten the rules of his entire life. You don't know what you're asking, he whispered. Maya didn't blink. Yes, I do, she said. I'm asking you to not leave. For a moment, the room was silent except for traffic outside and the faint drip of a leaky faucet. Then the man, Kang Jae-hyun, the broker, the one people feared, closed his fingers around the card holder and tucked it away like it suddenly didn't matter. He nodded slowly at Maya. Okay, he said, voice rough. If we get out of here, I'll take you. Hannah stared at him, distrust and disbelief twisting together. Why would you? A loud bang echoed from down the hallway. Not their door. A neighbor's. Then shouting. Angry, rushed. Hannah's face went white. They're starting. The man's eyes sharpened. He moved faster than he had all night, even with pain. He grabbed the star-shaped flashlight Maya had given him, clipped it to his pocket, and limped toward the window. Open it, he ordered Hannah. Hannah rushed, fingers fumbling with the stuck latch. The window groaned open, letting in cold air and street noise. The fire escape rattled slightly as someone somewhere in the building stepped on it. Maybe a cat, maybe a person. The man tested it with his foot, then looked back at Hannah and Maya. Listen, he said, voice lower now, urgent but controlled. You do exactly what I tell you. No arguing. No questions. Hannah glared. You don't get to order us. He held her gaze. Right now I do, if you want your daughter alive. Hannah's anger flashed, then collapsed into fear. Maya slid her small hand into her mom's. Mom, she whispered. Please. Hannah nodded once, tight and stiff. They climbed out onto the fire escape. The metal was cold, gritty under their hands. The drop below made Hannah's stomach flip. Street sounds rose up. Cars, horns, a distant siren, someone yelling into a phone. They moved sideways along the narrow platform. The man went last, one hand on the railing, the other pressed to his side. Halfway down, a voice shouted from above. Hey! Hannah looked up. A man leaned out a window on the floor above, eyes sharp, phone already raised. The broker's gaze flicked up. His face changed, hardening into something older than fear. He lifted one finger to his own lips, and the man above hesitated, confused by the gesture, just long enough. Hannah didn't know what came over her. Pure instinct, maybe. Survival. She grabbed a small potted plant sitting on the fire escape ledge, some neighbor's dying succulent, and hurled it upward. It smacked the window frame, dirt exploding, and the man above cursed and ducked back inside. Hannah didn't wait to see if he'd call again. They kept moving. At the bottom, the fire escape ladder was half broken, missing a rung. Hannah swung down first, landing hard and catching Maya. Maya dropped lightly like a kid who'd climbed things her whole life. The man dropped last, and when his feet hit the ground, his knees buckled. He caught himself on the wall, breathing hard. From the building entrance, voices rose, closer now. They're coming out, someone shouted. Hannah's head whipped toward the street. One of the SUV's doors opened. A man stepped out, scanning. The broker straightened like pain was optional. He put his body between Hannah and Maya and the street. Run, he said to Hannah, voice absolute. Take Maya. Go now. Hannah's eyes widened. What about you? He didn't answer. Maya grabbed his hand instead, small fingers wrapping around his like a shackle. No, she whispered fiercely. You promised. His throat worked. For 1 second, the broker looked like he might break. Not physically, but somewhere deeper. Then he squeezed Maya's hand once, gently, like he was afraid of hurting her. "I don't break promises," he said, low. He looked up, eyes locking on the men by the SUVs. And instead of running away, he moved toward them. Not like a king returning to a throne. Like a man stepping into the line of fire so a child could have a life. Hannah's breath caught as she realized what he was doing. Drawing them away, sacrificing himself. But before she could argue, Maya pulled her. "Mom," Maya whispered, voice shaking for the first time. "We have to go. He's doing it so they don't see us." Hannah wanted to scream. Instead, she clamped a hand over her own mouth, grabbed Maya, and ran toward the alley behind the building, heart slamming. Behind them, a voice shouted in Korean. Then another. Then the unmistakable sound of pursuit. Running feet, radios crackling, car doors slamming. Hannah and Maya ducked behind dumpsters, slipped through a gap in a chain-link fence, and burst into a narrow service lane that led toward a busier street. Hannah didn't know where she was going. She just knew she couldn't stop. They reached the corner, and Hannah yanked Maya behind a parked van just as one of the SUVs rolled past the alley mouth, slow and searching. Maya's fingers were ice cold in her hand. Hannah's mind raced. No plan, no safe place, no money except the few bills in her wallet. Then she remembered something the broker said without saying it. Wilshire branch. Mr. Yoon. Hannah swallowed hard, hatred and desperation mixing like acid. She flagged down the first rideshare she saw. An old Prius, dented, tired. The driver rolled the window down, suspicious. Hannah forced her voice steady. "Hospital," she said. Then she corrected herself quickly, because hospitals meant cameras. "No, bank. Wilshire." The driver frowned. "Lady, it's barely." Hannah thrust cash through the window. "Please." The driver looked at Maya, then nodded. "Get in." As the car pulled away, Hannah twisted in her seat, staring out the back window. She didn't see him. Only traffic. Only the city swallowing everything the way it always did. Maya pressed her face to the glass. "He'll come," she whispered, more like prayer than belief. Hannah didn't answer because if she opened her mouth, she might fall apart. At the bank, everything looked too clean. Polished floors, bright lights, people who didn't know what it meant to run. Hannah approached the counter with Maya clinging to her. Her hands trembled. She leaned in and whispered, "Mr. Yoon." The teller's smile dropped a fraction. Her eyes flicked to a side door. One moment. A man in a suit appeared minutes later, face calm, posture careful. He didn't look surprised to see Hannah and Maya. He looked like he'd been expecting them. "Ms. Park," he said softly, using Hannah's last name like it mattered. "Please come with me." In a small office, Mr. Yoon handed Hannah an envelope. Inside was cash. A lot of it. Enough to make Hannah's stomach turn. "There's a car waiting in the garage," he said. "Keys are in the envelope. You will drive north. Do not stop. Do not check into hotels. Go straight." Hannah's voice came out thin. "Where is he?" Mr. Yoon's eyes didn't change, but something in his expression darkened. "He's handling it," Maya whispered. "He promised." Mr. Yoon looked at Maya for a long second. Then he said, quietly, "He doesn't break promises." Hannah's throat tightened. They drove. Hours blurred into miles. Freeways, trucks, desert stretching, the sky turning softer. Hannah didn't turn on the radio. She didn't stop for food. She kept one hand on the wheel and one on Maya whenever Maya reached for her. Night fell. They pulled into a small rental house near the coast. Not a mansion, not luxury, just a plain place with clean sheets and a porch that faced the dark line of the ocean. Hannah set Maya on the bed. Maya didn't sleep. She sat with her knees hugged to her chest, staring at the door. Hannah stood by the window, watching the street, every headlight making her flinch. Then, near midnight, a car rolled up slow. Hannah's heart stopped. A knock sounded at the door. Hannah grabbed the heaviest thing she could find, a cast iron pan, and moved to the door like she was going to war. She opened it. He stood there swaying slightly, hair damp, face bruised, suit gone. He wore a plain dark hoodie like someone trying to look invisible. His eyes were exhausted, but alive. In his hand, he held something small, a paper crane. Hannah stared, stunned. He lifted it slightly. "She made me keep it," he said hoarsely. It worked. Maya flew off the bed and ran to him, arms wrapping around his waist before Hannah could stop her. He froze, like he didn't know how to be held. Then, slowly, he lowered his hands and rested them lightly on her shoulders, careful, protective. "I promised," he whispered. Hannah's eyes filled, furious at herself for it. "What did you do?" she whispered. "What did you bring to my daughter?" He looked up at Hannah, and for the first time there was no calculation in his face, only something like shame. "I brought her the worst part of me," he admitted, "and she still opened the door." Hannah swallowed, voice trembling. "They'll find you again." He nodded. "Yes. Then why are you here?" Hannah demanded. His gaze dropped to Maya. "Because she asked me for something money can't buy," he said quietly. "And I realized I've never been asked that before." Morning came slowly, pale light spilling across the porch. The ocean was louder than Hannah expected. Constant, steady, like the world breathing. Maya ran barefoot onto the sand, laughing so hard she almost fell. She chased the foam like it was a game made just for her. Hannah stood at the shoreline, letting the water touch her shoes, eyes closed like she was trying to memorize peace. The man stood a few steps behind them, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense like he was waiting for gunshots that never came. Maya sprinted back, grabbed his hand, and tugged him forward. "Come," she said, breathless. "This is the real one." He let her pull him to the edge of the water. The first wave washed over his shoes. He flinched, not from cold, but from surprise, like he'd forgotten the world could touch him without trying to hurt him. Maya looked up at him, grinning. "See? It doesn't bite." He stared out at the horizon, throat tight. Hannah watched him from the side. The dangerous man was still there. She could see it in the way he scanned the beach, the way he kept himself positioned between them and the parking lot. But something else was there too now. A kind of restraint, a kind of purpose. Days later, Hannah would learn from Mr. Yoon. Careful words, no details. That the broker had disappeared from his old life. That the organization that hunted him had turned on itself in a quiet civil war. That certain men were arrested, others vanished, and the neighborhood's whispers shifted direction. Hannah didn't ask for the full truth. She didn't want it living in her mouth. What she knew was simpler. The city had tried to swallow her daughter's future, and somehow her daughter had bitten back. On their last night before Hannah finally slept without flinching, Maya lined her paper cranes on the windowsill of the rental house, facing the ocean. She placed one more in the man's hand. "So you remember," she whispered. He nodded, fingers curling around it carefully. "I remember," he said. Maya looked up at him with that same steady seriousness that had started everything. "When you get sad," she told him, "you come to my room in your head, and you stay quiet, and you don't let the bad guys in." He swallowed hard, then nodded again like he'd just been handed instructions for living. Outside, the waves kept rolling in, unbothered, endless. And for the first time in his life, the man who had built an empire on fear stood in the open, holding a fragile paper bird, realizing the strongest thing he'd ever found wasn't power. It was a little girl who'd looked at him bleeding in the dark and decided he was still worth saving.